So in your view, what do you think the positives are of having social media, more technology to be able to work with?
Look, I think the big difference is, in the old days, back before the internet, my field's always been broadcast journalism. Yeah. That's the area I love. And unless you got a job at 7, 9, 10 or the ABC, there was nothing. You had to get a job there. There was nothing. But I think these days, the thing that is so exciting with social media and with the internet is it just opens up opportunities. You don't have to just get a job at one of the networks. You can start your own blog, for example. You can do your own podcast. You can actually control, take your career into your own hands and do it. So I think this whole change away from traditional media, while there are concerns, and a lot of old school journalists like me are concerns about standards, about people out there who are citizen journalists, on the flip side, there are so many wonderful opportunities. And I think, as I said, you just aren't beholden to a network. You can go out there and you can create your own, your own platform yourself, and it's accessible. Yeah. In the old days, you had to have a camera that was worth 30, 40 grand or whatever to film everything. Now you just need a mobile phone, and you can be on your way. Well,
personally, especially studying, I think there's no doubt that the direction of journalism is heading towards social media in general.
Totally.
It's going to be bigger and better in 5 years, 10 years, everything like that. So there's no escaping it. Yeah. And I think most people have found that very aware.
Exactly. And in actual fact, it could be argued, people have even a greater thirst for information. Yeah. And it's all about passing on information. So I think we're becoming even more savvy, and we're having this greater thirst for information. So I agree with you, James. I think the opportunity is becoming greater. It's just that it's been very difficult, this transition, because everyone's been trying to figure out how do we move from this print era of newspapers into this digital era? How do we move from the absolute dominance of the networks into viewing? How do we move from the 24-hour news cycle into the non-stop news cycle? But I think once we come out the other end, I just think the possibilities are endless.
So, as you said, with that greater thirst for information, and the fact that you can't, there's more places to work than just Channel 7, 9 and 10, where people used to rely on them to get all the information out. So it was a lot more, I'd say, a lot more laid back, or, once they got the information, they knew that they could, wait until that night to post it or anything like that. Yep. Do you think the fact that social media's become so huge, it can be a bit of a danger at the same time?
I think so, and I think too, the other thing I keep hearing is, for example, when I worked in television, in news, which is my core, you'd get in the morning, you'd do one story, and you'd have it that night. You'd put it on that night, and no one knew anything about it. There's a radio, but that didn't count. Sure. Whereas now the journalists, you've got your morning news feed, you've got this, you've got your online, you've got your afternoon feeds.
By the time it gets to 6 o'clock, you know exactly what's going to be on the news already.
Exactly, and the story's dead and you're moving. So I think, the flip side to it, the downside is, as a reporter, you're under so much more pressure because you're constantly... you're not just doing this sort of 24-hour news cycle. You're constantly updating. You're looking for a fresh angle. You've done the 11 o'clock news. Now you've got to do something for, the 4 o'clock news. Plus you've got to do an online story, and you've got to freshen. You have to. You can't just do one story with one angle. You've got to constantly just keep refreshing the story. And it's. I think the pressure, and I think probably the skill is a lot higher, but it is probably what's happening with the internet is one of the biggest. It's like the Industrial Revolution. It's enormous, and one of the key things, one of the key impacts is, I think it is just turning the whole world of journalism and how we get our news and how we expect to receive our news and the news cycle. It's just turned the whole thing up on its head.
Sure. So I mean, in terms of that as well, and the fact that everyone wants to get information out so quickly.
Yep.
We haven't seen it happen yet with big news, websites like your Channel 7s, 9s, 10s, things like that. But do you think in the future, as it becomes more important to get information out fast, that we're going to see an increase in lack of fact-checking and things like that?
I think so, very much so, because probably not so much with the websites. For example, the websites at 9, 7 and 10, they will still be regulated. They will still have... The key thing you need is editors. You need editors, you need sub-editors. Yeah. Journalists need... You need that layer. Yeah. always as a journalist, there is very rarely a time as a young reporter or an experienced reporter where you put a story in and there isn't a change, or there isn't someone there who is checking that there's no legal issues, there's no grammatical issues, it's presented in the best way possible. The biggest problem I see with the internet is you've lost that layer. You've lost that that protective layers. So you don't have someone who is there checking that everything's okay. So I think, as I said earlier, I think the fact that anyone can go out there and say what they want, the fact checking is an absolute, one of the, I suppose, one of the absolute downsides of it. But I think equally what will probably happen, I think when this whole thing shakes down in 5 years or so, people will know there are good news sites to look at. For example, I now live... the thing I love about news these days is I love international news. So every day I'm obsessed with American politics at the moment. So every day I look at the New York Times and the Washington Post, because they do the best sort of political coverage. Yeah. And that's the most amazing thing. So I can be sitting in my bedroom and I can look at the New York Post and find out what's the latest thing happening. Yeah. Everything's becoming accessible. What I think will happen is, I think, yes, there'll be a lot of standards that are up, but I think people too will gravitate back to good news sites and good internet sites that they know have good quality journalism and good quality fact checks and they can rely on.
So we'll end off with what my argument is. And my argument is trying to figure out whether social media is a positive or a negative. So we've just spoken about the positives and the negatives.
Yep.
Which one do you think outweighs the other?
I think at the moment we're in flux. We're all grappling with what to do. Yep. And I don't think we've quite figured out, and it's all sort of shaking out. I think it's going to be positive. I think in the end it's a positive thing, but we are going through this transition. While we go through this transition, it's hard because we're learning as we go. There's no roadmap. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think down the track, I think it's a positive thing, because I think the key thing is we're going to be able to get access to information instantaneously. It connects the worlds. Like I said, I can sit at home and just go, what's happening with American politics, and flip on the Washington Post in 2 seconds. And I think once we're evolved, I think there will be we will put checks and balances in, because I think people are inherently smart and people want a good quality. And I think I have a true belief in the fact that journalism is one of the key pillars of democracy. It is such an important thing to get good journalism. It really is one of the key cornerstones of any really good functioning democracy, and it has to be good information, it has to be correct information, it can't be fake news. And I think at the moment there's a lot of bad stuff out there, but I think, as I said, a lot
of good stuff coming.
A lot of good stuff. I think once we figure it all out, it'll be good in the end.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That's all I needed.
Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay?
That was brilliant. That's all I needed.
Good. Done.